June 25th, 1983. On any given evening in summer, but most notably in late June, there comes a moment just after the sun has disappeared behind the rim rock and just before the darkness has tumbled down the walls, when the bottom of the Grand Canyon gives itself over to a moment of muted grace that feels something like an act of atonement for the sins of the world. This is the fleeting interregnum between the blast furnace heat of the day and the star-draped immensity of the night, and when it arrives, the bedrock bathes in a special kind of light, the pink and orange blush of a freshly opened nectarine. This is the canyon's loveliest hour, when there is nothing sweeter, nothing more calming to the soul than standing along the shallows at the edge of the Colorado River and breathing in the wonder of the place, the ramparts rising nakedly for more than a vertical mile above, the locomotive-sized slabs that have peeled away from the terrace cliffs and shattered to pieces far below, and most bewitching of all, the muscular, sleuthing, glimmer-gilded surface of the great river itself. But June 25th, 1983 was not any given evening, not by a long shot. And with twilight now fading, the face of the water turned menacing and unknowable as the biggest flood in a generation throttled downstream into the night. An hour or so later, the moon appeared, ascending with stately deliberation, until it was suspended in all its fullness inside the thin ribbon of sky between the rims. There it hung, fat and heavy, casting the upper faces of the cliffs in a silvery and faintly malignant glaze. Deep within the canyon's corridor, the defile between the escarpments are too narrow to accept most of the illumination, and so the bottommost bands of the rock, the ancient strata of Zoroaster granite and Vishnu schist that line the edge of the river, was lost in shadow. But far upstream at a place called Lee's Ferry, where a breach in the cliffs marks the spot where all river journeys through the canyon begin, the walls widen and the river was able to open itself to the sky. Here the moonbeams streamed down the hunched shoulders of Shinarump Shale and spilled across the water, etching every wave, every ripple and eddy in a spectral radiance. Out there in the mill race, the rush of water was broad and powerful, and as the current pushed past, it did so with an eerie silence. But if you cocked your body in just the right angle, you could detect a faint thrum, a kind of basal tremor. The frequency of that vibration was impossible for the ear to pick up, but it registered unmistakably on the hairs of the forearm, the wall of the chest, and deep in the belly. This was the muffled resonance of a runaway river, the sub-audible bell tone of water surging with ungovernable force into the throat of the canyon. Just beyond the riverbank, a road led away from the water, snaking off in the distance toward Highway 89, the only throughway in this remote outpost of northeastern Arizona. The surface of that road was strewn with loose gravel, and about an hour before midnight, it crunched softly with the approach of a vehicle whose driver was proceeding guardedly. Behind the headlights loomed the boxy silhouette of a small delivery truck, a contraption whose appearance in this hour at this place was perplexing, because it seemed to herald the sort of business that never unfolds at the ferry, an after-hours FedEx pickup, perhaps, or the arrival of a stack of newspapers. The mystery was resolved only after the driver wheeled across the parking lot at the edge of the water, and it became clear that the truck was towing a metal trailer. Cradled on the bed of that trailer was a small wooden dory. The boat's profile was distinctive, an upturned prow that terminated in a sharp point, and a hull whose bottom was curved like the blade of a scimitar. Lashed to her decks were 2 sets of 10-foot oars hewn from straight-grained Oregon ash, and tucked into the footwell at the center of the boat lay a cable connecting a car battery to a pair of powerful search lamps, the kind of devices that jacklighters use when hunting deer in the dark. There was just enough light to make out her colors, a beryl green hull and bright red gunnels. And if you look closely, you could discern the black and gold lettering emblazoned along the right side of her bow that spelled her name, Emerald Mile. Between Lee's Ferry and the Grand Wash Cliffs, the sandstone portals at the edge of the Mojave Desert that marked the western terminus of the canyon, lay almost 300 miles of river, the worst of which were studded with the most storied whitewater in all of North America. Threading that gauntlet in a rowboat was an odyssey that typically lasted at least 2 weeks and could take as long as 23 days. Yet the Three River Guide's illegal pre-midnight launch on the crest of this flood tide was designed to smash that turntable to pieces. If this trio of daring rivermen could steer through the darkness and keep their bow square to the biggest waves, if they could somehow avoid capsizing or drowning or being broken apart on the rocks, if they could stay awake and maintain their pace by spelling each other at the oars while dodging the brigade of irate rangers who would soon be alerted to their unauthorized presence on the river, if they could carry out all these tasks without a single hitch, it was possible that the swollen Colorado might serve as a kind of hydraulic slingshot that would pitch them all the way from the ferry to the cliffs so swiftly that the duration of the trip would be calibrated not in weeks or even days, but in hours. At which point, if everything unfolded according to plan, the little green dory with the bright red gunnels would be catapulted into legend as the fastest boat ever propelled by oar, by motor, or by the grace of God through the heart of the Grand